Welcome back. Glad to see you. I hope you had a good weekend and that you feel well rested and relaxed. And hopefully, you have been finding ways to pass your time. Maybe doing some crafts, just something fun. I don't know. So, what we did last week was we analyzed political cartoons and we were looking at them through the scope of rhetoric. So, how are political cartoons used to to convey a message to the audience about what's happening in the political world? And so we're going to use that as a stepping stone into the really purposeful part of rhetoric, which is speeches. And we're going to be looking at a political speech, an inaugural address, and I'll explain that in a minute, from JFK. And we're going to see how he uses rhetoric to persuade the American people to come together during this time of crisis as he's first taking office. And that's really what rhetoric is rooted in, and what it's used for is to persuade large audiences on a political level, and then we use those skills that we learn through politics and business on a commercial level, convincing you to buy things and stuff like that. So everything that we've been doing in this rhetoric unit so far has really led up to this moment where we are looking at a fairly good size speech that is official, and he had a whole cast and crew of people, writers, working with him to make this perfect. And that's what we're going to be looking at for the next couple of weeks. Today, your goal is really simple. It is just read the speech and understand it. And in order to help your understanding, there are going to be 5 quick questions at the end that you will complete for your grade for today. So let's go ahead and let's look at the assignment on your Google Classroom and get started. So you have already clicked on this Monday or Tuesday video lesson, JFK Inaugural Address. Number 1, take attendance for the day. Go ahead and pause this video and go take your attendance. Number 2, view the video lesson attached. You're doing it. Number 3, read JFK's inaugural address. We will be analyzing this speech for rhetoric over the next 2 weeks. And it really is not a ton of work. I'm only going to give you a little bit each time I see you, but that little bit will be digging really deep into how he purposefully uses rhetoric to persuade his audience. Complete the quick 5-question comprehension questions for the JFK speech, and that's your assignment for today. So you will see that there are 3 attachments. One is the video that you're watching right now. The second is just the speech. It says JFK Inaugural Address, text only. When you click on this, the text of the speech will pop up. Here you go. And this is what we're going to be reading today together. And then the second task is your homework. It won't take long, but it is required for a grade. So you're going to answer 5 quick comprehension questions over the speech. We really can't analyze it for rhetoric unless you understand what the speech is about. So there are 5 quick questions, and you just write in complete sentences explaining the answers, and be sure to highlight your answers whenever you are done. And this is due on Tuesday at the end of the day. So Tuesday, 7 p.m., you're going to turn in these comprehension questions for your grade. So let's go back to the speech and let's talk about JFK for a second. JFK was a president, obviously. You all know some important things about him. Normally, when I teach this speech in class, I ask you guys to write down some things that you know about JFK already. Just whatever pre-knowledge you have. What do you know about him? And almost everyone writes down the same fact. I want to give you a second just to think. What do you already know about the President JFK? Just think. Okay. If you really did think during that time, what probably came to mind was that he was assassinated. And that is true. He was assassinated, and his vice president had to take office after his assassination. And some of you who really enjoy history, you were thinking about the time frame that he was elected president and what was going on during his presidency. The Cold War was the big political issue at the time. And so he kind of jumps straight into it when he joins office for the first time, which is in 1961. So whenever you are president, you are elected to the office in November. And then that following January, you have to give a speech. You are sworn in January, and you give a speech. And this is your first speech as the president. And the speech is called an inaugural address. Inaugural address. And you can see right here, President JFK's inaugural address. That means first. This is his first speech that he is giving as president. And there is a video of him giving this speech, and you can copy and paste this link, and then it'll just pull up in YouTube. Feel free to watch that. It is helpful to see how he speaks and his ways of moving, but you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. He is in a big group. He's in his big crowd, and so parts of it can be a little hard to understand. The text of the speech is also below, and I'm going to be reading this with you. Now, you don't have to listen to this part of the video. You can fast forward if you want to, that's fine. Some of you really need to hear me read it out loud, and it's really helpful for you, but some of you don't need it. So if you don't need it, fast forward. If you know that you do need it or that it might be helpful for you, just continue to listen. And I particularly think that it is helpful because I'll be pausing throughout to put in little snippets of information that might help you understand the context. So before we begin, before some of you fast forward through this portion, again, what's happening is the Cold War, and there is an arms race. And what that means is that everyone is fighting to create these nuclear weapons and have the most power of threat. Every country wants to be able to threaten the others with their massive amounts of power. And so there is this nuclear arms race going on in a Cold War where there's not a lot of communication between different countries, and there's no physical fighting at this point. That's why it's a Cold War, like giving someone the cold shoulder. And we're going to go ahead and jump in. So he begins by addressing the people that he wants to talk to. Vice President Johnson, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chief Justice, President Eisenhower, Vice President Nixon, President Truman, Reverend clergy, fellow citizens. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. So in the beginning, he is already showing that he's credible by saying that he's willing to swear before God, and that what he's doing has historical context. He talks about the first president being sworn in. So we do see some rhetorical appeals here. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet, the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. So what we have here is he's talking about how the world is different because we have the ability to destroy. We have the ability to abolish all forms of human poverty, so destroying in a good way. We can help one another, but also, paradoxically, also killing all human life with these big weapons that we are making. We have so much power in our hands, and we should be scared of that power. And we need someone like him to rule us and to guide us appropriately. There is a literary device called antithesis. You might have learned about this before. And it's when you have two parallel phrases that are the opposite of each other, and they're separated by the word not. The belief that the rights of man come they're separated by the word but, not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. So you have from the generosity of the state and from the hand of God. Those are parallel phrases, and they're separated by the word but. They're introduced by not and separated by the word but, and that's called antithesis. It's a rhetorical device that you'll see that he uses a lot. He also used it up here. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom. It's a very clever rhetorical device. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed. That's an idiom. To a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed, and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. So he lists these 5 things that Americans possess. We're born in this century. We're tempered by war. We're disciplined. We're proud, and we're unwilling to allow our rights to be taken away. That's parallelism, using those repeated phrases that sound the same over and over and over again. And remember, antithesis is when parallelism is separated by the word but. So it's contrasting parallelism. And that information will be really helpful for you in next class's lesson. It's not necessarily helpful today, but if you're watching this, you'll remember and you'll be able to go back. Let every nation know, so this is a warning, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe. Stop it. To assure the survival and success of liberty. This much we pledge, and more. So he was warning the other nations that we would do anything to continue to own our own liberty. To those old allies whose cultural and spiritual origins we share, so to our allies during the Cold War, we pledge the loyalty of faithful friends. United, there is little we cannot do in a host of cooperative ventures. Divided, there is little we can do, for we dare not meet a powerful challenge at odds and split asunder. Saying, allies, let's continue to work closely together in this Cold War, in this political climate. To those new states whom we welcome to the ranks of the free. I think that at this point there was a new state that joined America. I could be wrong. You're going to want to fact check this, but I think that it's Alaska. I think. But I could be very, very wrong. So we're going to need to fact check that. To those new states whom we welcome to the ranks of the free, we pledge our word that one form of colonial control shall not have passed away to merely be replaced by a far more iron tyranny. We shall not always expect to find them supporting our view, but we shall always hope to find them strongly supporting their own freedom, and to remember that in the past, those who foolishly sought power by riding the back of the tiger ended up inside. That's a metaphor, and what he's talking about here is that those who tried to use America's strength to their benefit, are going to end up being eaten alive by our strength. So he's calling us this mighty tiger and saying, watch out. Don't try to use us or manipulate us because we can destroy you. It's a very destructive and violent image that he's creating in this eloquent speech. To those people in the huts and villages of half the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever period is required, not because the communists may be doing it, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. To our sister republics south of the border, so now he's talking to other people in North America and South America, we offer a special pledge to convert our good words into good deeds and a new alliance for progress to assist free men and free governments in casting off the chains of poverty. It's a metaphor. But this peaceful revolution of hope cannot become the prey of hostile powers. Let all of our neighbors know that we shall join with them to oppose aggression or subversion anywhere in the Americas, and let every other power know that this hemisphere intends to remain the master of its own house. Woo! He's calling for the rallies. He's saying we are going to maintain the master of our own house, and no one on the other hemisphere can mess with us. It's intense. It's very powerful. To the World Assembly of Sovereign States, the United Nations, our last best hope in an age where the instruments of war have far outpaced the instruments of peace. He's saying we live in a time where it's much easier to start a war than it is to be peaceful. We renew our pledge of support to the United Nations to prevent war from becoming merely a forum for invective, to strengthen its shield of the new and the weak, and to enlarge the area in which its writ may run. He's saying we want to support the United Nations and to enlarge in the area where it has control. Finally, to those nations who would make themselves our adversary, enemy, we offer not a pledge, but a request that both sides begin anew for the quest for peace before the dark powers of destruction, the atom bomb, unleashed by science, engulf all humanity in planned or accidental self-destruction. So here he's requesting the enemy sides in this Cold War. He's requesting them to start looking for peace because these weapons that they're creating are really dangerous and they could accidentally blow up the world, or on purpose they could blow up the world. And that's not hyperbole. That's just what they were facing at that time and what we might still be facing now. Who knows? But he is not threatening them here. He's begging. He's saying, let's both look for ways to be peaceful during this. I hope you are enjoying this so far. I think we're at 13. We dare not tempt them with weakness, for only when our arms are sufficient beyond doubt can we be certain beyond doubt that they will never be employed. Meaning, when our weapons are so strong, when we have so many weapons that we can be sure that we're safe, then that's when we can be sure that we're never going to have to use them. It's a paradox. We need a ton of weapons to make ourselves the strongest nation, so that way people are afraid of us, and then we don't need to use those weapons. A paradox is just a really long oxymoron. So you have a paradox here saying we need the weapons so that way we hopefully don't have to use them. But neither can two great and powerful groups of nations take comfort from our present course, both sides overburdened by the cost of modern weapons, both rightly alarmed by the steady spread of the deadly atom, yet both racing to alter that uncertain balance of terror that stays the hand of mankind's final war. So, Let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. That means be doubtful when someone is trying to be your friend. We need proof that they're being sincere. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. That's another antithesis. Let both sides explore what problems unite us instead of belaboring those which divide us. Let both sides, for the first time, formulate serious and precise proposals for the inspection and control of arms, and bring absolute power to destroy other nations under the absolute control of all nations. Let both sides seek to invoke the wonders of science instead of its terrors. Let us explore the stars, conquer the deserts, eradicate disease, tap the ocean depths, and encourage the arts and commerce. Let both sides unite to heed in all corners of the earth the command of Isaiah. This is a biblical allusion. To undo the heavy burdens and let the oppressed go free. So on 16, 17, 18, and 19, he began with let both sides, let both sides, let both sides, let both sides. Whenever you repeat the way that you start phrases, does anyone know what that's called? Anaphora. It's just repetition at the beginning, anaphora. You may have had a teacher before who pronounced it anaphora. It's the same thing. And if a beachhead of cooperation may push back the jungle of suspicion, let both sides join in creating a new endeavor, not a new balance of power, but a new world of law where the strong are just and the weak secure and the peace preserved. All of this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in this life of this administration, or perhaps even in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin. So he's saying, let's try to get this peaceful, united world where we are helping the poor, we're not enabling the rich, and we're stopping war, and we're aiming towards working together. Just this kind of utopia that everyone wants from this president. Please stop that. In your hands, my fellow citizens, more than mine, will rest the final success or failure of our course. Since this country was founded, each generation of Americans have been summoned to give testimony to its national loyalty. The graves of young Americans who answered the call to service around the globe. I didn't read that paragraph correctly. I need to go back. In your hands, my fellow citizens, more than mine, will rest the final success or failure of our course. Since this country was founded, each generation of Americans has been summoned to give testimony to its national loyalty. The graves of young Americans who answered the call to service surround the globe. There we go. Meaning we might need to call you into service. You might be drafted. Now the trumpet summons us again, not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a battle, though embattled we are, but to a call to bear the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, a struggle against the common enemies of man. So these are the enemies of man: tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. Can we forge against these enemies a grand and global alliance, north and south, east and west, that can assure a more fruitful life for all of mankind? Will you join in that historic effort? So he's pleading with them to join. In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any of the people or any other generation. The energy, faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it, and the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what we together can do for the freedom of man. Finally, whether you are citizens of America or citizens of the world, ask of us here the same high standards of strength and sacrifice which we ask of you. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to the land we love, asking His blessing and His help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own, saying we need to work as the hands of God together. Then the crowd goes wild. And that was his first speech as a president. Incredibly powerful. So we're going to be using this speech over the next couple of weeks to look for pieces of rhetoric, because he had a team of writers working with him on this speech. Where was he using ethos, pathos, logos? Where was he comparing and contrasting, using anaphora, using rhetorical questions? Where was he using paradox, allusion? So this speech is really a work of art that pieces together all these different bits of rhetoric. And we're going to practice how to piece that apart and figure out how he was purposefully persuading the American people. So let's go to your comprehension questions for the day. Number 1, analyze the impact of specific words used by Kennedy, such as free and freedom, and determine how these words contribute to the overall tone. Why does Kennedy use the word liberty in paragraph 5? So why does he use free? Why does he use freedom? Why does he use liberty? How do these words make us feel? Why is he choosing them? His tone is powerful and strong and demanding, courageous, brave. So why is he using these words to get us on his team? Number 2, reread paragraphs 3 to 5. Be sure to go back over and look up from 3 to 5. 3, 4, 5. He's talking about what's happening in the world. According to the text, what was the situation in the world at the time of his address? We talked about that a little bit. Number 3, what words or phrases does Kennedy use throughout the speech to evoke emotion in the audience? Don't use free and freedom here. Look for different words. What kind of emotions are stirred in the audience because of the words that he's using? Number 4, Kennedy addresses several specific audiences throughout the speech. Who are these groups and why does he address them? So you're going to be looking back through the speech and figure out who is he talking to at different points in the speech. Let's see if we can find a couple to start you off. So here, look at the beginning of 7, look at the beginning of 8, look at the beginning of 9, and just keep going down the list. But that's where you'll see that he's addressing different groups. And why does he address each particular group? Using a bulleted list for this number 4 would make your life easier, probably. Number 5, the last one, how are the beginning and end of the speech similar? Why does Kennedy begin and end in this way? If you're still watching this video, I'm going to help you out on this one. He starts in the beginning by talking about God, saying that other presidents have also sworn before God. And then at the very end, he also talks about God, saying that we need to do God's work. So using that information, answer the second part by yourself. Why does he begin and end his speech in this way, talking about God? What's the rhetorical purpose? And that is your task for today. Those footsteps are my husband walking really quietly out the door, and now he's running away. If you have questions, please email me and let me know. I am happy to help you. These 5 quick questions are due on Tuesday at 7 p.m. I want them to be in full sentences. For number 4, it's okay if you use bullets, please highlight your answers. Some of you are doing great with this, and I appreciate it. I hope this reading was helpful. We're going to be using this speech again for the next couple of weeks, so hopefully you can keep going back to that reading and it will help you a little bit. Don't forget that at the top of the speech, if you want to listen to JFK say it, feel free to. There's a little YouTube link right there. All right, so attendance, submit those 5 comprehension questions by Tuesday at 7 p.m. We will come back to this speech during our next lesson to continue and to look for some rhetorical devices. All right, bye guys. Have a good day.